Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachaelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I'm Rachael Flick and I'm here at the Waymaker World Conference in Orlando for the American Association of Christian Counselors. Today I'm excited to bring you an incredible story of Dr. David Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins is an author, speaker, professor, and the clinical director of the Doctor of Psychology in the Clinical Psychology program of the School of Behavioral Sciences at Liberty University. Prior, he was the program director for the master's program in addiction in counseling. With nearly 30 years of clinical experience as a clinical psychologist, Dr. Jenkins specializes in the integration of Christian faith and clinical practice. In 1990, his brother Charlie was murdered. Dr. Jenkins is here today to share his story with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
This is an honor to hear your story.
Yeah, it's if any good can come out of something like that, I am more than happy to have that happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Sure. I know a lot of people are going to be blessed by what you've allowed God to do with a horrible loss.
Right.
Yeah. So would you tell us what happened to your brother?
Sure. Charlie, had gotten heavily involved, alcohol, drugs, stuff like that. He had accepted Christ at an early age, so, he knew better on a lot of things. So he was in this phase, I think he was 34. If he had have been given another year or two, I think he probably would have come out of all of it. He was in a phase of starting to give it up, not starting to give it up. Well, he was in a relapse phase. He was at this country bar, and some guy, the guy that eventually murdered him, Charlie had been at this bar, playing harmonica in a band, didn't have his license. So the guy that murdered my brother, first name Joe, had some guys messing around his house. I mean, kind of in a big time way. So we're talking very rural, country, redneck kind of area type of deal. And the way that Joe was living, it's understandable people were why they'd mess with him, because he was kind of antagonistic and all these kinds of things. So he was actually camping out on another guy's property. So Charlie was at the bar. This guy somehow finds out that Charlie needs a ride. He saw Charlie, my brother, talking to the guy that's married to Joe's ex-wife.
Okay.
That's the only connection. My brother didn't know these people, didn't know him, had no clue what was going on. And Joe just focused in on my brother. He said, that guy knows something's up with him. And when he found out Charlie needed a ride, he offered to give Charlie a ride.
So he made an assumption that Charlie was connected to what was going on, harassing him at his house.
So it wasn't even a case of mistaken identity. It was even more foolish than that. It was just, I got one of them. I'm going to get the information I need. So that started this whole brutal kidnapping, torture, hog tying, stuff like that.
Wow.
Went on for probably 2.5 hours. And eventually, judge just rolled him over and shot him through the neck. Then dumped his body in a river. This was in August. It started actually on my wife and our anniversary. So,
That's a tough, I call them grief anniversaries, right?
Yeah,
Where you have these anniversaries that bring you pain cyclically, to layer that on top of your anniversary for your wedding.
So Charlie's body was on the water on a river in August, 2 weeks. Some fishermen found him in some brush on the river. And this whole thing, the kidnapping, the torture, the hog tying, the dumping of the bridge, the washing down the river, we're talking touching on 5 different counties before it's all over with. Nothing was called into question. So did that become a
federal case?
No,
okay.
But state was involved. But the red tape involved in that, nothing complicated about that. That was never challenged or anything. So anyway, Joe, within about a week, they couldn't identify Charlie initially. They had to, amputate hands and looked at marks and stuff like that. So I'm out in Oregon working on my doctorate, and Judy and I are out there. I've been out there 2 years. We're 3,000 miles away from my family. And so my own personal journey, there were times when Charlie had been there for me when nobody else was. Mm-hmm. And so here I am, 3,000 miles away. The one time I needed to be there for him, and now for my family, we're out there. Now, we know obedience to the call of God and all that, right? But we're still separated from, do we need to stop this plan and go home and be part of caring for my family? So we just kept going. We knew it was going to be brutal.
So you're saying you were trying to decide between your doctoral program and kind of moving back home and helping everybody deal with this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we were able to, we worked it out. We stayed in Oregon. We had to make some adaptations. I had to back off of some clinical work, make sure my stuff wasn't going to interfere with my client's stuff, right?
I mean,
ethically,
absolutely.
I have a duty to do that.
Yeah.
So I backed out of work. I backed out of practicum and clinical training stuff for, a few months, about a semester's worth. My first disclosure of this, when I let my program know that I was going to have to, go home for a week and all this kind of stuff, I told them what happened. My primary faculty and 3 or 4 of my student colleagues were actually helping move and pack their office the Saturday morning I drove into town to tell them. So my first public disclosure, I ended up being surrounded by people who laid hands and prayed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
An amazing thing. So, went home and just found out the details. And so we had to go through a murder trial, several months later.
So for people who are not familiar with that,
Right.
What's like a timeline of something like that? Like how long are you embroiled in the court process?
Well, the first trial, because we had a 13-page confession that was signed and initialed every paragraph and all that kind of thing, there was no question that he had murdered my brother. I think the murder was in August. I believe the first trial started in March, so it wasn't that long. So they were trying him on first-degree murder, felony murder, which is a murder that occurs in the commission of another felony, and first-degree kidnapping. So they had 3 charges, and just to read the list that the judge says would take a while, right?
Yes.
The first jury came back with a verdict in just over a half hour on all 3 charges.
So
that's how clear-cut it was.
They didn't need any time to think about that.
Right. So between that and the second trial, the North Carolina Supreme Court overturned the first one. So we had to go through a second murder trial.
Oh, my goodness.
And that jury came back guilty on all 3 charges in about 40 minutes.
Okay.
So you've got a total time of just over an hour.
Well, and that decision-making process, thankfully, the evidence was so clear-cut and direct, and they had what they needed to make the conviction. But I think what I'm pulling out a little bit is that when you have these tragedies that involve law enforcement in some way, it's not just the loss of your family member or loved one. Like the courts and the attorneys and hearing the testimony, right? Like I would imagine that you sat there and heard the evidence presented, which is painful and stressful, and it just can feel like it goes and goes and goes.
I'm a pretty peaceful guy. Never been in a fight to hurt anybody. I'd wrestle around with my brothers, of course, but so I'm in that first trial, and the third full day of the trial, it became really clear what the details were. And there were at least 4 other people that were involved that never faced any consequences. And one in particular knew he was there. They just couldn't prove it, just didn't have the evidence to do that. So I am just wrapped up in anger. I'm in doctoral studies that already practiced clinically and stuff like that. I knew I was stuck.
Yeah.
I just God, where in the world am I supposed to go with this? Because, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good in my heart.
Yeah.
So, that night, I knew we just had to do business, right? And he
You and
invited
God.
me to. Yeah, and he invited me to. And he said, who else you going to go to? Where else you going to go? Who else you going to go to? And I said, you want me to bring this into your presence? He said, yep. And I said, okay. You know what I mean? At that point, it was like, okay, here goes. And it was just, in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 30 minutes, just the hate, the anger, the rage, he had healed me up from some things. Joe made this comment in one of the trials. He said, don't you worry about, said to one of the other guys, don't you worry about a thing. They aren't going to connect you to this. And most they can give a man in a crazy house of 2 years. Don't think this SOB won't plead insanity.
Mm.
And right then, boy, I went, not a bad idea. Maybe I'm just going to take the wonderful, miraculous healing that God did in my life and, okay, 2 years in a crazy house, not a problem.
And am I hearing your subtext of like you were so furious that you wanted to kill the man
Yep.
that murdered your brother?
And that's where God took me in my own heart. So I finally got still, be still, wait for me to speak. Okay. Then he said, now, who loved your brother more? This is God speaking in this moment of prayer and clarity, Who loved your brother more? You or me? Well, you, of course. He said, okay. So who do you think's angrier about this? You or me? Who do you think's sadder about this whole thing? You or me? And he was taking my heart to his heart. Your brother, now this is where he really turned the tables up. Now think about my son. You're Charlie. Sinless? Well, he didn't deserve the murder, but I'm not sure sinless would be the descriptor of Charlie, right? And so he took me to the cross, and I said, now think of my son. And then in that stillness, when I knew I was in trouble at that point, right? Good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good trouble. Freedom's coming.
That's right. I knew my shackles were about ready to get broken. And he said, now. He pointed to my heart, and he said, now, what was that about murder? And I realized at that point, I was guilty. I was guilty in my heart of murder. And I felt this internal relief. It was from inside out and up and down. It was just this complete freedom, and the shackles were broken. And forgiveness didn't fully happen then, but I knew at that moment that full forgiveness would be possible. I knew it'd take a while. I knew it'd be a journey. So a couple of years later, I actually wrote a letter to Joe. There had been some evidence in the trial that Joe had accepted Christ at some point, and, he went on the stand to lie about the whole thing again, so not my business. You know what I mean? Okay, all right, I'm going to go on the fact that somebody's vouching for the fact that he's a brother in Christ, right? So I wrote a no-holds-barred, but, a straightforward letter that wasn't angry or hate-filled. I just wanted to make sure he heard the gospel and knew the truth. And I said, look, you got to pay for this with your earthly life. There's not even anything we can do about that. It's too clear-cut. You will be paying for this.
So he received the death sentence for his crimes.
Both of them. Yeah, North Carolina had the death penalty, and they were using it at the time. There was just no question where it was going to go. But I said, but you don't have to pay for this with your eternal life. And so I just put some verses together, laid out the gospel, and said, look, if you can find some meaning and hope in the middle of all this, then do so. So I never heard anything back. I called the chaplains and told them, said, look, I'm sending this letter. Please follow up. I never heard anything back from anybody. He never did apologize to the family or anything like that. So I actually, 13 years after the murder, his execution occurred. I was actually at the World Conference in Nashville. I flew from Nashville to Raleigh at 10 o'clock at night. Execution was at 2 a.m. I hopped on a plane and flew back to Nashville, walked right out and into a room of 450 folks for a session.
That you were presenting.
That I was presenting. And honestly, best session I've ever done. Still.
Do you say that because you had a sense of relief, like this is done?
God had set me free, and that forgiveness had occurred. I'm on the tarmac. I knew I had 2 hours of flight time to prepare for what I was going into at the execution. So I'm already praying. I was planning to use that whole 2 hours just to be prepared. Before the plane ever took off, I'm in the middle of praying, and the Holy Spirit prompted me. He just said, look, listen to what you're praying. So I'm praying for Joe to have a good death. I'm praying that he will immediately be ushered into God's presence, and he'll be at peace. And I'm praying that if it would please God to have my brother welcome me home.
Wow.
So I knew right then, God, you have acted in my heart. This is beyond me.
That's incredible.
You know what I mean? It is completely beyond it, because I know where I was back when I was spewing.
Yes, yes.
I had some of Charlie's biker
180.
friends calling, asking permission to commit a crime in the county so that they could take care of business. And this was the week of his funeral. I mean, I had biker friends.
They wanted some vigilante
Yeah,
justice, right? They wanted to do it.
Yeah, and so it's, nope, out of respect for my parents, out of respect for us. Less than an hour after we buried Charlie, my parents are, we're praying for Joe and his family. So, it's when that happened on the plane, I knew this was so far beyond me to produce in me, that forgiveness, that I realized at that point, this was not about the completion of justice. You know what I mean? It wasn't an anger, hate-filled, retribution kind of thing. It was just, look, this principle of justice is huge. Unrequited justice causes trouble. I had seen 2 innocent juries, people coming out with tears in their eyes because of the decisions they had to make. And I said, no strangers are ever going to be alone in this again, right? There will be a family member at this execution, right?
Right.
So my nephew also went with me. But that freedom, I realized at that point that, this was not about the completion of justice. It was about the completion of love, and not for my brother. It was about the completion of love for Joe Bates.
Wow.
And and he just took me, yeah, exactly.
Man.
So when he blows your doors like that, you know what I mean? You got to pay attention.
Yeah, I have chills.
And, so my tears and all of that now mainly are about, gosh, the freedom. You know what I mean? The freedom that even that level of destruction and pain and loss and, all that it did to my parents and my family, all that stuff, that it doesn't own me because Christ does, right? We're his, and we're free from all of that.
Yeah.
Now it's a hard journey. I learned a lot about my need to become more competent as a clinician because of that journey he took me on. But he did convince me, you know what I mean? He practically convinced me that kind of freedom is possible. Now, you can't mandate it. You can't make people take that treatment. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you can certainly offer it.
Yeah.
And I'm big on informed consent, right?
Wouldn't that be nice if life came with it, just like your therapy sessions? I did not get informed consent in this situation. Right. I did not know what I was signing up for.
That's right. So if somebody's ready to go there, I say, okay, look, I hear you, and I'm with you, but I don't know what it's going to look like exactly, but hang on.
So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So I have a lot of law enforcement that
Right.
listens to the Hopecast because of Micah's death, and
Right.
they've experienced a lot of trauma.
Right.
And I know that many of them struggle with anger and resentment and bitterness for things that have happened to them and
Right.
people that they serve with and love.
Right.
And they're stuck.
Yep.
And so, you had this literal come to Jesus in this conversation with God that just
Yeah.
shifted
Yeah.
your heart and helped you grow
Right.
into a posture of forgiveness.
Right.
So one of these, law enforcement officers is sitting with you,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, all right, I don't want to live in resentment and bitterness and fury, and it's eating me alive.
Right.
How can you take them down that journey to start the
Right.
forgiveness process?
Well, they run toward danger for the sake of others. They have to make a decision to run toward that for themselves
Wow.
and run to the cross. But he'll take you there. And it's almost like when you've got a cancer process or something like that, and they've got to remove some of the healthy tissue to make sure they get all the damaged stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like that with trauma, that in the inner workings of our soul, I think God has to go deeper than the injury to bring that level of healing. And that actually starts becoming not really an expectation, but I just understand, life just kind of works that way right now. Do I give God informed consent? Do I sign the consent form to let him do my heart surgery that I have to have if I'm going to be free from that resentment and anger and being stuck? And I think people can get to a place of, living a life that's satisfied with sort of earthly forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
But the
Not
freedom,
physical
right,
or in your heart where you can really feel released
Right.
and free.
right. But
Yeah.
that full, free forgiveness of knowing nothing owns me.
Yeah.
See, Joe doesn't owe me a thing, right? So when you calculate the forgiveness debt, you've got to calculate what happened. You've got to do the compounded interest on that. You've got to project what it's going to
Yeah.
cost in the future.
Yeah.
And then are you willing to sign it away and cancel that debt?
Yeah.
And that's where I just have to trust God with that kind of forgiveness and that kind of debt. I think that's what he
Yeah, because
offered
people
us.
would say that you're entitled to that, that
Right.
tragedy that happened to you and the loss of your brother. I think that it's important when we talk about forgiveness to
Right.
remind people that it's really about empowering themselves for a future of freedom, right?
Right.
Because
Right. Yeah.
bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
really, like you feel justified in your anger and your fury towards that person, but really you're the one who's suffering, and they may not even know that you're suffering, right? So forgiveness doesn't say that what happened wasn't wrong.
Right.
It doesn't say that you're okay.
Right.
And it doesn't say that they can continue to perpetrate.
And it doesn't say I have to be best buddies with
Right.
the
Yeah.
perpetrator. Right.
Yeah, like we're now going to hang out and go to dinner,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
No, that's not a part of forgiveness. And I think we've confused forgiveness with denial or sweeping things under the rug, or, not really recognizing that it's about us.
Right. And while that's understandable, the way you described it was an apt description, and that sort of reflects that at that level, it's kind of about us wanting to reduce our pain and our aggravation, and those shortcuts are part of what leave us stuck. But it's a hard journey. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't want to. I want folks to understand the possibility of the freedom.
Yeah.
I don't want to shame them into, oh, you should do this.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't.
Right.
That's not my intention whatsoever. It's
No.
to say the
No.
freedom and the freedom's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to see the clarity on your eyes, and even just kind of a a warmth and a radiance when you talk about this. You know, I can see so much of where God has taken you beyond what I said, which is kind of like, you know, kicking the door open a little bit, right? Get your toe in the door. Like, this isn't about them, right? Like, you want to be free. And then you can come here with David to this next level of this beautiful spiritual reality of what you said was the completion of love.
Yeah. See, that's still bizarre. You know what I mean?
Isn't it incredible?
It's a crazy experience. And when you get, you know, you start to get used to knowing that he will take you beyond yourself. But it's frightening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not kidding when he says, you have to learn to walk by faith, not by sight. And, all right, God, I'm jumping. You know what I mean? You're going to catch me, I guess. You know what I mean? And,
right.
And if I fall, you'll still be there too.
Yes.
So whatever this looks like, you're in charge. You know, we just submit ourselves to him. And not my will, but your will be done. You know, that puts you in the Jesus camp. And he's not kidding about that.
Right.
Yeah.
David, this has just been such an honor for you to share this story.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And as a trauma survivor, I just so admire and respect the work that you've done and just this wholehearted space that you've brought us into. I mean, it's just, I feel like I'm on holy ground right now seeing what God has done in your life and your heart.
Oh, thanks. It's, he's a good God. And he loves us, and he's there for us. And nothing separates us from him.
Dr. Jenkins, if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, do you have a website or any social media?
I don't have a website. I am not on social media.
You're like a secret.
I am like just, you know, I am at Liberty, have a Liberty email address, djenkins@liberty.edu.
Okay.
And I'll try to respond as soon as I can.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be an incredible support for a lot of people.
Yeah, actually, there's a forgiveness series.
Okay.
That the AACC has. Dr. Ev Worthington has done research on forgiveness and all of that. My testimony as well as his is on that, in that part of that series.
Beautiful.
So I'm not trying to hawk wares, just make a resource known.
Oh, that's a huge resource. Yeah, people need that.
It's a great series.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I would love it if you would rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and share it wherever you think that people would benefit from the message of hope and David's incredible story of redemption in the face of great heartache. And it's just been such a beautiful opportunity today. Know that you are prayed for and loved, and I'm thinking about all of you. You can connect with me at rachaelflick.com. Everybody, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.